Hi there, I'm Chris.
And I'm Paul.
And welcome to another episode of Smokin' Mirrors. On this particular episode, we'll be talking about the movie Drive. Now, I wanted to open this video and kind of talk about, I've noticed a lot, because I read a lot about movies, and I read a lot of reviews, and I read a lot of forums and criticisms and stuff like that. And for Drive in particular, I wanted to talk about the fact that there seems to be this attitude about this movie, where if you don't like it, you just didn't get it, and you don't understand it, you're stupid. I don't think that's the case. I really like Drive, don't get me wrong, but I feel like you can understand everything that happened in the movie and not like
appreciate.
it. And appreciate it for sure, and that doesn't mean you have to like it. And I just wanted to open with that and just say that, I don't know, if you didn't like it, you're not stupid. I feel you, I understand that there are problems with it. I liked it, but if you didn't, that's completely fine. Okay, let's open. What was your lasting impressions from the movies?
Well, I'm actually glad that you introduced with that, just because I still, I'd watched it before. I'd watched it, right when it came on DVD or whatever. And then I watched it again today, and I'm not really, I guess I'm just not wowed by it. I can understand what they're doing, and I appreciate what they're doing by everything, but overall, it's a movie that's really silenced with a lot of awkward moments and some extreme violence. But I think, you had brought up a point to me the other night when you were saying, the extremeness of the violence is what makes it, more realistic, because, it's so crazy, we're used to seeing people being, shot up or whatever, it happens in action movies, but it does, so we're desensitized to it or whatever, and so, to see it in such an extreme form with such, good music, and it's very visceral, and it makes you feel like, oh my god, this is actually happening. And so to make that happen is what you would actually react with violence. Even though it's a bit extreme, for movies it has to be so in order to cause the reaction that they were going for. So I did appreciate that.
I agree completely. In fact, that's one of my favorite things about this movie, is that for those of you who have seen it, you kind of know that the violence in this movie kind of comes out of left field, because the first half of the movie, it has to do with crime and whatever, but the violence in it just doesn't happen until you're already in and you're settled with the character and you're settled with the theme and the tone of the movie, and then just out of nowhere is this visceral violence, and it's gory and it's harsh to watch. We accept it so often in our movies, and especially our action movies, and it becomes kind of like a joke at a certain point, because these heroes.
Expendables too.
Well, exactly. It becomes the celebrated mode of telling the story, and there's not a problem with that. It's just that I feel like in our American movie culture, we've kind of lost the impact of violence, and I think that Drive does a really, really good job of bringing back that impact.
My favorite parts, plural, of the entire movie was anytime it goes slow motion, it is the best scene ever. Even though some of the extreme violence are in regular pace, I guess. Oh man, I guess that's safe for the review. Anytime they go in slow motion, I was captivated. I was in it, the music was just perfect to keep me drawn to the screen, thinking about what's going to happen, being impatient for it to go, and that's what you should be getting from a movie. You should be pulled in like I was.
See, the main thing I took away from the music in this movie is they kind of do a theming thing with this movie. It's kind of it's very 80s-esque, but in a modern setting.
Synthesizers.
Yeah, with the music in particular, they use the music really well to theme. They use a couple other things, for instance, the font of the movie title is very and the color, it's very 80s-ish. Besides the music, they also do sound really fucking well. It's really good. For instance, the first time you hear a gunshot in the movie, it made me jump, and I knew it was coming. It made me jump the first time I saw it, and I knew it was coming last night when I watched it again, and it made me jump again. Just because, they do this thing where they just know how to use the absence of sound really, really well. And it makes the sounds that you do hear when they, come out of that much more impactful. It's I feel like the techniques that went into this movie are very masterful. For instance, I think their use of color palette is some of the best I've seen.
Explain color palette really quick.
See, okay, so color palette, it started in the late 90s, where we have this trend of movies that kind of wash their movies in a certain color. For instance, The Matrix is washed in green, and you can tell that it's just they have a fucking green filter over the lens, and it's just not, it's not subtle, it's not, I guess it was nuanced at the time, because it makes you think of technology and stuff like that, but the problem is it started a trend, and where most of our action movies, for instance Transformers, was a really big offender of just using like filters to make the colors stand out more. Whereas Drive has this really really subtle color palette where they used because orange and blue are like opposite colors, and you can use them to highlight like intensity. And they use this really interesting way of filming where they have orange and blue palettes in the movie quite frequently, but they're very very subtle. They're not on like a filter. They come from the scenery being orange and blue,
That's a really
and it
good
just
point.
makes the movie really really pop. It makes the movie really like just appealing to the eye. It's very stylized, and like I said, like it's not impressive because they use two opposing colors. Because like I said, a lot of movies do that. It's impressive because they did it with subtlety.
They worked it into the background of the
Exactly.
scene with like the wardrobes and everything.
Exactly. As far as we're talking about visuals, I had a conversation with you the other day about the difference between like a driving movie that focuses on the car driving
You
and
helped me pay attention to this.
and then driving movies that focus on the stunts. And if you notice in this movie, if you go and watch it, you notice that a lot of the driving scenes in the movie, actually the camera is like placed in the passenger seat or like in the middle of the car, and so you see the movements of the driver as well as the car. And it makes it, as someone who appreciates, driving and like cars and stuff like that, it made it really fun to watch because it made it you're centered in the car, you hear the power of the engine, you see the turns, like you see just like you get the feeling you're there. And then by contrast, I have a point to make about this. By contrast, there's a scene where there's kind of like there's not a whole lot of driving in the movie, which is a criticism that it's drawn before, but I kind of feel like the driving that's in the movie is placed there very purposely. And okay, for instance, you have a lot of driving scenes, and then you kind of near the middle of the movie, you have like this one like kind of climactic driving scene that's kind of a car chase, if you will, where they kind of draw out the camera a little bit more. But see, a movie like Fast Five or Fast and Furious or something like that would draw out the camera a lot, and it would like focus
Like how
on
you started off with Fast Five. That was just funny.
on top of my head. But anyway, in movies like that, they draw out the camera a lot, and they show like all the cool flippy and like semi trucks and driving under them and whatnot. And it's all about like, look how amazing and spectacular this is. It's not really about like the driving itself.
It's not driving well, it's doing cool things.
Exactly. It's stunts and not driving.
Yeah.
And anyway, in this climactic car chase scene, they kind of pull out the camera a little bit, but it's still not far enough to get that. It's still close enough where you feel the power of the car. And I think that's something that like I said, it did really, really well, is you felt the power of the driver and you felt the power of the car in this movie. Looking back, having watched this movie a second time, I really like what they did with the awkward silences because I think it established what the character is inherently really, really well. Another thing I want to say about the silence, while we're on the subject, is like a lot of the silence, it comes from the relationship with the girl, and like they have multiple conversations where he's like, they're both really quiet. But like something I think that needs to be said about those scenes is like, yeah, they're just like sitting there being awkwardly quiet, but if you watch their facial expressions the whole time, there's a whole lot going on there.
A lot of communication.
There's a lot of communication. They do these soft smiles to each other, and it's just like,
There's a lot of acting within
Exactly.
the lack of dialogue.
As a movie, it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch those awkward silences.
I think for modern audiences it is, because we're used to like fast talking, fast plot, everything going like especially like Dark Knight. It just go from the beginning. It's just like 2 hours of climax, and like everything's hitting hard immediately. And it's not like back in the '60s, like you go watch Rebel Without a Cause. There's a lot of awkward silence in that movie, and it's just because like you wait for the dialogue, you wait for the acting, you're more patient. Whereas today we demand action, or at least like plot advancement at every second.
So, would you recommend watching the movie?
Would I recommend watching the movie? If you like artsy movies, definitely. If you like Ryan Gosling, it's not a bad movie. If you like to be shocked by violence and not just like watch an action movie or whatever, it's a really good movie. I personally like if we didn't plan on doing this review, I would not have watched it again. Like and to this day, I probably won't ever see it again. Not because it's a bad movie. I'm glad that I have seen it. I would probably give this movie like a 6 on my likeness scale, like close to like probably an 8 or a 9 on like actual artistic achievement. Like it is a great movie, but I would say like I was bored for a lot of it, and it just made me uncomfortable, and that's not what I'm looking for when pleasure watching movies.
I can understand that, but I disagree. I would definitely recommend the movie. You should go watch it right now. With that being said, you might not like it. I understand that a lot of people don't like this movie, and like I said, like I have a problem when people disagree on movies. They kind of find a way to like like hurt the other person and just like assume that they're stupid for not liking it. And I don't think that's the case. It's something you either like or you don't like. And I really, really liked it. I'm really a big fan of the way that the movie was framed and the way the movie was shot. I think stylistically they have a lot going on for them. The music is perfect. The plot is awesome to me, and we'll talk about that more in our analysis, which is coming up after this video. I definitely recommend it. Go see it. Tell me what you think.
Let us both know what you think, because we love to be proved wrong, and if you want to tell me that I'm an asshole for not liking this movie, it's more than likely true.
I mean, like I said, I have emotional connection to it because I liked it a lot, and it has emotional impact for me. But
so if you say anything, if you hurt Chris, I will hurt you.
Well, like that's what I'm saying. But my emotions are not tied to whether or not someone else likes it. I also wanted to say we didn't get any comments on our first video. That's fine,
bastards.
Well, yeah, bastards. But if there's a movie you'd like us to review, I mean, we sometimes have pretty polarizing opinions, and it could be interesting to hear us talk about something we might not agree on, or something that we do agree on. But anyway, if you have any movies to suggest us, please suggest us movies, and we'll watch them and we'll review them for you.
We're open for recommendation.
Yeah, so just let us know. And like you said, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.